I was halfway through dinner at my son's house when my phone rang, and my neighbor whispered something that made my blood run cold. "I'm Michael Grant. I'm 72, a retired civil engineer, and these days I live alone in a quiet corner of suburban Austin. 5 years ago, my wife, Linda, died in her sleep. Since then, the house has had a way of answering back, floorboards that remember her steps, a kettle that whistles a little too hopefully. My son, Daniel, says Sunday dinners at his place keep me connected. I say yes because it's easier than explaining the kind of silence I prefer. That night the table looked like a magazine cover. White plates, gold-rimmed glasses, a rosemary sprig on every napkin. But the warmth was staged. The smell of garlic drifted through a room that felt like a lobby. My phone buzzed against the wood. I glanced down. Frank Dawson. Frank doesn't call to chat. He's a former firefighter who speaks in short sentences and only when it matters. I answered. "Frank?" All I could hear for a moment was breathing, ragged, urgent. "Mike," he said, voice low, "are you home?" "No, I'm at my son's." The silence that followed stretched a little too long. Then he whispered, "Mike, if you're not home, then who's in your house?" I went cold. My fork hovered above the plate. Across from me, Daniel finally looked up from his phone. His face was lit blue by the screen. Money apps, always money apps. I stood, chair legs scraping the tile. Before I could say a word, Daniel laughed. Not a kind laugh. Not the "it'll be okay" kind. It was sharp and strange, like a door slamming in an empty hall. Chloe touched his forearm and smiled at me with the kind of smile people practice in mirrors. "Oh, Mike, it's probably a reflection. The cul-de-sac lights bounce off windows." Frank's whisper cut through again. "Flashlight beam in your living room. I'm looking at it." My heart slammed twice against my ribs, steady and hard, the way a warning sounds. I told Frank I was on my way, ended the call, and looked at my son. He was still shaking his head, still amused, as if fear were an old man's hobby. That laugh, that was the sound of my foundation cracking. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I set my napkin down and tried to make my voice even. "I need to go, Daniel." He leaned back, that confident sprawl he learned in business school. "Dad, relax. It's probably the Henderson's cat, or Frank's eyes. It's dark. Sit. Eat. You're safe," Chloe chimed in, her tone warm but hollow. "You'll only get worked up. Have a little more chicken." I made a lemon glaze. I'm an engineer. When I hear the word probably, I start looking for load paths and failure points. The way Daniel smiled didn't carry any weight. It didn't bear anything. It tried to float away from the moment, like he needed this to be nothing. I picked up my keys. Chloe's house is the kind of place that photographs well. Every edge is flawless. Every surface gleams. It's expensive, yes, but not loved. You can tell when a home has stories. Hers had statements. The kitchen island was a slab of stone big enough to land a helicopter. The chairs were shaped like ideas, not for sitting. Even the art on the walls looked like it had been chosen by an algorithm. I sat at that big, glossy table and felt small in a way I never felt on a job site. Back then, when I ran crews and signed off on bridges, I knew exactly what I was building and why. This room, this life of theirs, was all about display, not purpose. I watched my son scroll in silence, thumb flicking, eyes locked to a glow I couldn't enter. He was in the room, but not with us. That's been the trend for years. Chloe can talk for two. She filled the air with Hawaii, private beach, butler service, a saltwater pool that heals the skin. She used the word deserve 3 times before dessert. Dessert never came. Under her chatter, I could hear the seams. Daniel's been saying tight quarter for a year. Chloe's been posting hotel balconies and monogrammed towels. The numbers don't add up unless you're borrowing against something you didn't earn. "How's the portfolio, Dad?" Daniel asked without looking up. "Steady," I said. Which is true. I'm boring on purpose. Bonds, blue chips, no heroics. He knows this. He's asked before, always casually, always while his eyes are elsewhere. Smart, he said, and finally raised his gaze. There was a flash of something there. Envy, hunger, and then it was gone. Liquidity is king, he added, like a man who wanted me to agree with a lesson he hadn't learned. I took a slow breath and answered the only way that keeps families from pulling at threads they can't mend. You two doing okay? Chloe laughed, a soft bell. Perfect, actually. We're taking a little break soon. Maui, we need it. Need. Deserve. The room was full of words that promised comfort and hide pressure. That's when my phone vibrated. I didn't feel it so much as hear it. A small sound that cut through polished air. I answered on instinct. Frank's whisper sank into me like ice water. Flashlight, movement, someone's in your living room. The next 10 seconds are a picture I could draw with my eyes closed. My chair slid. My keys were in my hand. My pulse climbed but stayed steady. Old training, field checks in bad weather, breath for the task. Daniel's head tilted, chin up, a smile he wears when he wants me to believe he's the reasonable one. Dad, he said, drawing the word. Out like gum. You're not going to race across town because Frank saw a shadow. He laughed again, a little shorter, a little higher. Come on. I've heard a lot of sounds on job sites. Cables singing before a pull, steel complaining before it yields, concrete chipping under a bad freeze. That laugh didn't belong to reassurance, it belonged to stress. It was the sound something makes right before it fails. Chloe reached for the serving spoon. Just try the potatoes, you'll feel better. I looked at the spoon, then at my son. For a long second, we just held each other's eyes. He wore a look I couldn't read, a mixture of impatience and relief, as if he needed me to sit down for reasons that had nothing to do with dinner. Frank doesn't call unless it's real, I said. I'll check it out and text you. I left the napkin folded the way Linda used to do it, corner to corner, a small, tidy triangle. I don't know why that detail mattered, but it did. It felt like the difference between panic and purpose. On my way to the door, I passed their console table. There were framed photos, engagement smiles, beach sunsets, Daniel shaking hands with men in suits whose names he never says. There was also a key bowl. 2 fobs, a metal tag engraved with Chloe, under the keys a folded receipt. You learn to notice alignment after 40 years of drawings. The receipt was misaligned, edges sticking past the tray. I didn't touch it, but I saw the header, Titan. I filed that away without knowing why. Call us if you need anything, Chloe said, already turning toward the sink, already rinsing plates that had barely been used. I will. Daniel stood in the doorway like a bouncer who didn't want to step outside. Seriously, Dad, it's nothing. I wanted to believe that. I wanted him to be the kind of son whose laugh could lift weight from a room. But I've spent a lifetime listening to materials tell the truth. Foundations don't speak in poetry. They speak in hairline cracks and small tilts you only catch if you get low and look along the plane. In the driveway, the night felt wider than usual. The air held the smell of sprinklers and cut grass. I slid into my car and rested my hands on the steering wheel for 1 second, just one, and let my breath settle. Then I turned the key. As I pulled away, I checked the mirror. Daniel stood framed by his own light, arms folded, watching me go. Chloe stood half a step behind him, hand on his elbow, head tipped toward his shoulder, like a woman trying to hear what a man isn't saying out loud. I drove toward my street with the kind of focus that comes from knowing what matters. I've never been the fastest driver, but I am precise. My eyes scanned the road, then the sidewalks, then the windows. As I turned onto my block, I slowed and killed my headlights early. Old habits. You don't walk into a building before you read its posture. From half a house away, I saw Frank's bedroom light, the curtains slightly parted, a shadow shift. He was watching. My front windows were dark, too dark. No TV glow, no hall light. My house only looks that quiet when I'm not in it. There are moments in life when your body knows more than your mind. Standing there in my son's doorway, hearing his laugh, I didn't have the facts yet. But I had the data that matters at the start. A neighbor who never exaggerates, a beam of light where it shouldn't be, and a son whose laughter didn't fit the load. The rest would come. For now, all I had was the feeling I've trusted for decades, the one that says, don't ignore the first crack. And yes, I heard it as I pulled away, echoing faintly under the hum of my engine, under the night sounds, under my own breath. That laugh, that was the sound of my foundation cracking. The patrol car lights washed my porch in red and blue, turning my curtains into a heartbeat. 2 officers met me at the walkway, polite, textbook calm, hands resting near their belts but not on them. I unlocked the door while they stood to the side, doing that half pivot they learn at the academy so no one gets silhouetted in a doorway. Inside, their flashlights skimmed along the molding, over the framed photos, across the mantel where Linda's favorite little brass clock still ticks. Living room clear, kitchen clear, hallway clear. The older one ran a gloved finger along the back door latch, then nodded to his partner. No pry marks, no splinters, no shattered glass anywhere. Mr. Grant, the younger one said, tone warm the way you talk to someone's grandfather. It all looks secure. Neighbor probably saw a reflection. Happens a lot this time of night. I thank them because that's what you do. They suggested a motion light upgrade, gave me a card, and stepped back into the chorus of insects and sprinklers. When their engine faded, the house felt too quiet. Not the soft quiet of a long day ending, the hollow quiet you get after a crowd disperses. The kind that leaves a shape behind. I stood in the center of the living room and listened to the tick of Linda's clock. The air held its usual notes, cedar from the bookshelf, a hint of coffee, clean laundry, but underneath was something thin and unfamiliar, like a chord just slightly out of tune. I checked the deadbolts, then checked them again. Habit, not fear. I sat in the dark on the edge of the sofa and replayed the last 10 minutes at Daniel's. Not the words, the laugh. That laugh didn't belong to reassurance. It belonged to a man cornered by a fact he couldn't control. When you've watched Steel Bow or heard a cable start to sing, you learn to hear stress. His laugh had stress in it. Maybe the officers were right. Maybe Frank's eyes caught a stray beam from a passing car. But my gut said otherwise, and my gut has built more bridges than any spreadsheet. Airline cracks don't announce themselves with fanfare. They whisper. You either learn to listen or you learn the hard way. I turned on the lamp, exhaled once, and decided I'd treat this like I treated every job for 40 years. Collect data at first light, at sunrise. The house shows you what the night hides. I brewed coffee, let the first sip settle my hands, and began an inspection, slow, methodical, the way you read a structure's posture before you put weight on it. Entry first. The welcome mat, stitched with home, has a habit of trapping whatever the world tracks in. Halfway along its edge, a faint crescent, reddish, fine-grained. Not the chunky, dark soil from my garden beds. This had silk to it. I knelt, angled my head, and caught a tiny ridge pattern. A shoe, not mine. My soles leave hexes. This was lines and chevrons. I didn't touch it. I went to the kitchen, grabbed one of Linda's old spice jars, and used a folded index card to coax a pinch inside. Labeled it Sample A, because old habits are a ladder you climb without thinking. Back door next. Latch was intact. Sill was clean. The bug screen had a faint smear at shoulder height, the kind of rub you get from fabric sliding past. I leaned in and breathed once. That's when I caught it, a ghost of something expensive. Citrus and resin, not mine. Daniel likes colognes with names that sound like yachts. This wasn't his exact brand, but it lived in the same neighborhood. I walked the rooms in a lazy S-curve, letting my eyes skim for the sort of micro-disturbance only your own routines reveal. Throw blanket on the reading chair, not folded the way I fold it. Linda taught me corners to corners. Muscle memory is a metronome. Today, the fringe was a degree off. The rug in the hall had a ripple near the thermostat, as if someone had stepped there and turned. You could call that paranoia, Or you could call it measurement.engineers live in the gap between appearance and behavior. A beam can look straight and still be carrying a lie. You learn to read the lie. By late morning, I was staring at the spice jar on the counter as if it could answer me directly. It couldn't, but I knew who could. I called Mark Henderson, the geotech whisperer from our old firm, the man who can tell you where a hillside came from by licking his thumb and rubbing a pebble. "Mike," he said, voice still bright despite the years. "You back in the mud business?" "Just for a day," I said and explained. He laughed softly. "Send it. I'll run it through the sieve and give it a look." I overnighted the jar. Then I waited in the way waiting feels, when you've already guessed the answer and need the lab to bless your intuition. 2 days later, he called. "No small talk. Processed bentonite," he said. "High sodium content, fine grind, commercial additive. We use that for sealing boreholes or as part of foundation assessment kits." I stared at the floorboards. "Not garden soil. Nope, you don't pick this up on a hike. Someone brought it. On purpose. Mike, whoever stepped on your mat wasn't looking for your TV. They were testing something. Testing my house," I said. "Testing your foundation," he corrected gently. After I hung up, I stood at the back door and pictured a stranger in a hard hat, a clipboard in one hand, a flashlight in the other, checking slab edges, tapping for hollows, marking tolerances. A burglar steals, an assessor measures. Someone had been inside my home, not to take but to value. That's a different kind of violation, more precise, more dangerous. And if you're asking who would care that much about the value of my house, the list is short. 3 letters, really. Dan. I set the phone down, let my coffee go cold, and felt a quiet shift inside me, the click you hear when a load transfers from one member to another. Suspicion became geometry. Motives are math dressed in feelings. At night, with the house dark and the fan turning a slow halo on the ceiling, I opened the county property database and typed my address. The screen refreshed, and there it was in a font that doesn't care about your history. Estimated market value, $200,000. I leaned back, the chair creaking the way it's creaked since 1993, and watched that number sit there like a verdict. Linda and I bought this place with a 30-year mortgage and a box fan in the window. We painted it ourselves, ruined a perfectly good pair of jeans laying tile in the hall. We sent extra principal when we could. Celebrated the day the bank sent the letter, paid in full. That page is still in the file cabinet, framed in my head. Now the world calls it equity, a word that turns your life into a lever. My son has been using softer words. Downsize. Simplify. You'd love a condo near the lake, Dad. Elevator, no stairs. Think about it. The first time he said it, he was helping me carry a bag of mulch. The last time, he said it while scrolling through listings on his phone, tapping a unit with quartz countertops and a view of other people's living rooms. I heard them all again. But inside the frame Mark handed me, someone inspected my foundation. Someone cares about what this house can fetch as collateral. And the only person who has been rehearsing that topic in my presence is Daniel. My jaw tightened and then released. I remembered a Sunday afternoon 6 months ago. Coffee, pastries from the good bakery. Daniel's smile turned down to concerned son. He had said, "It's too much house for one man." And I had changed the subject to football because love chooses peace where it can. I didn't say anything out loud now. I just reached for the old file box, the one with our deed and the tax statements. I thumbed the edges of paper that still smelled faintly of ink. All the documentation of a life built slowly. When a number gets that big, 1.2 million, it doesn't seduce you. It seduces the people who think the world owes them a shortcut. I closed the browser and stared at the window. The glass held a dim reflection of a man who's built bridges and holds his breath before every first crossing. You test loads before you let traffic roll. My son was pushing weight onto a span that wasn't designed for him, and I had a bad feeling he'd already driven something heavy across it. You don't accuse a structure, you instrument it. I poured a fresh cup and built myself a checklist. Banks, brokerage, pension, credit, every system gets measured. Checking accounts first. I logged into the local bank, Two-factor ping on my phone, the little chime I still can't bring myself to change. Deposits match the ledger, pension on the 5th, Social Security on the 3rd. Utilities, grocery, pharmacy, hardware. A few restaurant charges I could name by the smell on my jacket. Nothing large, nothing strange. Savings next. The balance had nudged up from interest in its slow turtle way. No transfers out. No surprise transfers in. Brokerage. I opened the portal that always makes me feel like I'm trespassing on my own money. The pie chart looked exactly like me. Boring, resilient, allergic to drama. Blue chip stock slices. Bond ladders. Dividend reinvestment, steady as rain. No sells, no buys in 6 months. For a second, I almost let myself exhale. Then the checklist glared. Credit. I'm the guy who used to treat his credit score like a badge on his hard hat. High 700s for decades. I only checked it yearly, a ritual on my birthday. Today, I broke the ritual. I opened one of the big 3 sites, answered the usual security riddles about ancient addresses and car loans I'd forgotten, and waited while the wheel spun. When the number appeared, I felt it in my knees before my eyes believed it. Down, almost 200 points down. That does not happen without something heavy landing on the deck. I scrolled. The page summarized my negative events. There was only one that mattered, a new installment loan. Opened 6 months ago, lender Titan Capital Group. Original amount $750,000. Status, current, 30 days late. Reported. Collateral, 3190 Redbud Lane, Austin, TX. My address. A pressure settled in my chest. Not panic. Wait. I clicked View Details, hands less steady than I like to admit. The next page held the underwriting line items. The kind of sterile fields only lawyers find lyrical. Borrower Michael Grant, my social. My birth date, broker of record, Daniel Grant. I stared at those 2 names touching each other on the same line, as if the database itself believed the story. You don't need music to hear a heartbreak. A printer whirred in the office next door because my finger had hit print without asking me. View documents, a link offered, polite as a maitre d'. I clicked. The PDF loaded with an angular corporate logo that felt like a threat. 20-odd pages of legalese. I didn't care about the first 19. I scrolled to the signature page. There I was, Michael Grant. The signature looked like mine. The R curled just so. The cross on the T had the slight trail my old wrist gives it. But the pressure was wrong. You can't fake pressure from a ballpoint. You can only fake its shape. And whoever had done this had shaped me well. Next line down in a flourish I recognized from birthday cards and a dozen thanks dad notes. Daniel Grant, broker. He hadn't even tried to hide the handwriting. Why would he? On paper he had authority. I just didn't know how yet. For half a minute I let myself fall. Linda's face rose in my mind. Laugh lines near her eyes. The way she pretended to be mad when I tracked mud in. The way she forgave before I finished saying sorry. I thought of teaching Daniel to ride a bike in this very street, my hand at the small of his back, steadying. I thought of the boy who cried because he scraped his knee and the man who learned to laugh when his father felt fear. Grief is a storm that wants to topple whatever's vertical. I let it pass over me and counted to 30 the way I used to count when a bridge was taking its first live load and the wind picked up. Then I did what engineers do when the weather's wrong. I went to the data. I printed the credit report. I printed the loan file. I laid them side by side on the dining table like plans. I grabbed a pen and built a map. Dates, amounts, signatories, notary stamps. The notary's name, Brenda Cole, filed for later. 6 months ago, aligned with something else. Something I couldn't see yet but would. The weight in my chest shifted to angle. There is a moment between collapse and control where you decide who you are. I'm not the man who screams into a phone. I'm the man who checks the bearings, jacks the span, and calls the right crew. I gathered the pages into a neat stack, squared the corners, and spoke into the quiet house just once, so I could hear myself commit. Okay, Dan, I said. You built a structure on my land. Now I'm going to demo it. By code. Then I reached for my address book and found the name I needed next. Evelyn Price. The next morning, I didn't sleep. I just sat at my desk, the papers spread before me like evidence in a courtroom that hadn't yet been called to order. When the sun rose, I picked up the phone and dialed Evelyn Price, the attorney who handled Linda's estate years ago. She'd known our family since Daniel was a teenager, back when he still wore braces, and called her Miss Evelyn. Her voice hadn't changed. Steady, confident, and lined with warmth. "Michael," she said, "it's been a long time. What's wrong?" I didn't waste words. Someone took a loan out against my house, $750,000, and whoever it was forged my signature. There was a pause long enough for me to hear her typing. "Then, who had access to your financial documents?" "My son," I said quietly. "Daniel." The silence this time wasn't professional, it was personal. I could hear the shock flatten her tone. "Michael, listen to me carefully. For him to have secured that much, he couldn't just fake your signature. He needed legal power, something like a power of attorney or joint authorization." I felt my pulse kick. "I never gave him anything like that." "Are you sure?" she asked. "Think back. Did you ever sign a packet he brought over, maybe labeled as a routine update? Sometimes they hide the power forms among innocuous ones." My throat went dry. A faint image flashed. Daniel at the kitchen table months ago, pastries, coffee, the easy rhythm of a Sunday morning. I remembered his voice, soft, persuasive, just a few estate updates, Dad, standard stuff. "Evelyn will appreciate having it all aligned. I hadn't read them closely. I trusted him." Evelyn's tone softened. "Michael, I'm going to need to see every piece of paper you signed in the last year. Don't confront him yet, not until we know exactly what we're dealing with." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "And when you do know?" She exhaled. "Then we take it apart, piece by piece." I went to the file cabinet and pulled out the accordion folder labeled Daniel Misk. The irony wasn't lost on me. The papers were neatly stacked. Insurance renewals, bank statements, property tax receipts, and there it was, a thinner folder inside with a blue sticky note that read, "Estate signed." I opened it slowly. The first page bore Titan Capital's header, but the one underneath froze me, "General Power of Attorney." And there in neat cursive sat my name, Michael Grant, signed in ink. My hand, my curve, my style, except it wasn't my pen that wrote it. The notary's seal beside it, Brenda Cole. I recognized the name. She was Chloe's friend, the one who handled real estate paperwork. My stomach turned. The memory came alive like a film reel. Daniel sitting across from me, sleeves rolled up, that easy smile that only sons can weaponize. "These are just updates, Dad. Evelyn's office needs them to keep the house secure. You know how estate laws keep changing." He'd poured me coffee, distracted me with talk about his kids, his plans, his business, how family assets should stay within the bloodline. I remember signing 3, maybe 4 sheets, not realizing what was buried among them. Linda would have read every line. She had the patience for details. I signed out of trust, out of love, out of the belief that a son raised in a good home wouldn't sell it out from under me. Now, holding those same pages, I felt both shame and fury. The phone rang again. "Evelyn." "I have it," I said. "The power of attorney, dated 6 months ago, witnessed by Brenda Cole." Evelyn sighed. "Then it's exactly what I feared. He used that document to secure the loan. Legally, it looks like you authorized him. We can prove fraud, but we'll need evidence of intent and deception." She paused, voice tightening. "Michael, listen carefully. You must not let Daniel know you've discovered this. If he suspects, he'll move to sell or refinance. That would complicate recovery." I closed the folder, gripping it until the edges cut into my palm. "What do I do?" "Play along," she said. "Stay calm. Let him think the old man is still in the dark. We'll gather proof quietly. Once we have it, we'll crush him in one strike." Her tone was steel, and for the first time in days, I felt something close to control. We met 2 mornings later at her office downtown, a modest corner suite overlooking Congress Avenue. Evelyn still wore her hair pinned back, same as years ago, but the easy warmth in her face had been replaced by precision. On her desk lay a yellow pad divided into two neat columns, evidence and strategy. She pointed to the first. Evidence: forged power of attorney, Titan loan agreement, notary Brenda Cole, bank records, and your testimony. We'll need proof that Daniel used deception and that you gained nothing from the transaction. Then she moved her pen to the second column. Strategy: we play dumb. You pretend you're overwhelmed, maybe even confused. Let Daniel relax. He'll get careless. In the meantime, I'll subpoena Titan Capital's internal documentation. Every phone call, every email, every signature verification log. I watched her work, efficient, surgical, controlled. Michael, she said, eyes locking on mine, you built bridges. You know the importance of stress tests. This is one. Let him show where he's weakest. What about Chloe? I asked. Evelyn smirked faintly. She's part of this whether she knows it or not. The notary Brenda is her connection. Once we expose that Titan, we'll panic. They'll realize they enabled a fraudulent filing. They'll want to settle before the press gets a whiff. Her confidence was contagious. So what do? Invite him to dinner, she said simply. Same setup. Same house. Act normal. And record everything. We need a confession, or at least a slip. I nodded, slow, deliberate. The kind of nod I used to give on a construction site before lifting a girder that could kill a man if done wrong. As I stood to leave, Evelyn added quietly, one more thing. Don't let this destroy you before we win. You've already lost enough. Her words landed like rebar, strong, grounding. Walking out into the Texas sun, I felt something stir in me that had been dormant for years. Revenge wasn't the goal. Justice was, but sometimes they wear the same hard hat. Sunday came around like a calendar test I couldn't skip. I mowed the front lawn, shaved, and put on the blue shirt Linda always said made my eyes look less tired. I slipped the tiny voice recorder into the breast pocket, Evelyn's gift no bigger than a paperclip, and checked the red light twice before I left. It captured 30 hours, encrypted uploads to my cloud when it hears my home Wi-Fi. Belt and suspenders, she'd said. My kind of lawyer. At Daniel and Chloe's, the same pre-set theater waited, candles that smelled like the lobby of a new car, plates aligned like compass points, background music at exactly the volume where you feel rude if you ask to turn it down. Chloe opened the door with a hug, more formal than warm. I felt the recorder nestle against my sternum. Dad, you made it, she chirped. Daniel's on a call, big week. Of course he was. In the kitchen, a Dutch oven simmered without splatter. Chloe stirs, like she's afraid of ruining the picture. I glanced at the console table, where the tray of keys sat under a stack of mail. On top, another white slip with the Titan header. I didn't touch it. The red light in my pocket blinked, patient as a lighthouse. Daniel came in, phone still in his hand, voice still turned up for an audience. He ended the call with a grin sized for investors, then reset his face to sun and kissed my head. Hey, old man. Hey, kid. We sat. He poured wine he couldn't afford. I watched the way he didn't look at Chloe when he set her glass down. Couples telegraph pressure in the gaps. She filled them with chatter, vacation points, upgrades. We've earned this. My fork touched food. My eye touched everything else. On the island, a leather folio with a gold zipper lay half open. Inside, a banker's notepad and a black pen the size of a small submarine. The corner of a closing checklist peeked out. Boxes, dates, initials. My heart stepped, but my face didn't. I kept my voice soft. How's business, Dan? He leaned back, the swagger a little rusted. Good, very good, busy. We're realigning. Strategic pivots. You know how cycles go. I do, I said. You pivot when you've hit a wall. He smiled with only the top half of his face. Walls are opportunities. For half a second, his smile slipped. Tired eyes, the kind a man gets when debt calls at 2 a.m. Then he patched it back on. Chloe cut in, bright and brittle. Dad, how's the garden? Are those zebra tomatoes still, what did you call it, productive? Overachievers, I said, and let them pace the conversation together. I gave them what Evelyn told me to give, harmless, a touch forgetful. I asked about their car. Chloe described the sound system like it was a pet. I nodded at the exact places where a tired father nods. When Daniel finally tilted the conversation toward me, it arrived like a truck backing up. "So, Dad, how's the old place holding up?" "Stairs, okay. You really shouldn't be changing light bulbs on ladders anymore." There it was, buttered and sliced. I let the fork rest. "Light bulbs I can manage." "Sure, but—" He glanced at Chloe. "We worry. You know, condos, elevators, amenities, pools," Chloe said too fast. "And, security," Daniel finished. "You deserve easy. Deserve." He'd been learning from her. I set the fork down, slow enough for the recorder to hear the click. "Appreciate it." He tried again, gentler. "We could help list the house. I've got a buddy at Shoreline Realty. Great guy, white glove service. He could get you a cash buyer in like a week. You'd be sitting on 7 figures, Dad. Think about it. Travel, comfort. Travel where?" He had to think. "Wherever. Maui, London?" "You always liked bridges." "Still do," I smiled. "I like the ones I live under best." He chuckled without teeth. Chloe touched his wrist. "That's when he made the mistake Evelyn predicted. He overcorrected. Look, we're not pushing. We're just timing things. Market's hot. If you move now, you'd clear what, 1.2? After fees?" He caught himself, saw my eyes, and rerouted. "Anyway, you know we're here." "Sure," I said, and the recorder waited. He changed lanes. "By the way, Dad, couple letters came to our address from Titan Capital. Weird, I told them to fix it." Chloe's fork paused above the plate. She looked at the candles, then at nothing. He had pulled her into the sentence by accident. The page corner in the folio shivered like it knew it was guilty. "Titan Capital," I said, like a man mishearing in a loud room. "Yeah, junk. Vendor spam," he said. "You know how it is." A laugh, the wrong note, familiar from the week before. I nodded, the way old men nod when they let their kids be right. "Mel gets confused. We ate. They performed normal." I recorded it. After dinner, Chloe insisted I take lemon bars for the road. While she boxed them, Daniel walked me to the door, hands in pockets, shoulders a fraction too square. The hall light drew a hard line down his face. "You know we love you," he said, suddenly soft. "I'm just trying to make sure you're set." "I am set." "Right," he said. "Right." He glanced at the key tray, at the Titan slip he'd left on top. He chose not to move it. Overconfidence is gravity in these schemes. "Call if you need anything." "I will," I said, and stepped into the warm evening air. In the car, I sat with the engine off and let the recorder run for 1 more minute. You can't always capture the truth with proof, but sometimes you can catch the weather a lie makes. Tonight, the barometer fell 3 degrees. Daniel was sweating, and he didn't know I could read it. When I got home, the upload light on my modem flickered. The file left my house like a message in a bottle with GPS. I poured a glass of water, stood in Linda's kitchen, and allowed myself to feel what I'd kept at bay at their table. The ache of being someone's father and someone's mark at the same time. The ache lasted the length of the glass. Then I rinsed it, dried it, and wrote dinner 8:12 p.m. Mention of Titan, condo push, mail mix-up, in a notebook I'd titled Logbook. We were past suspicion. We were in the part of the plan where men who think they're winning start leaving fingerprints they can't see. Monday, 8 a.m., Evelyn's office smelled like paper and electricity. She had 3 screens up, county filings, Titan Capital's registered agent, and a social graph of Brenda Cole, the board. Behind her looked like my old markup sets before a poor, coloured flags where the poor could fail. "Tell me he slipped," she said without preamble. "He mentioned Titan," I said. "Called it junk mail." Condo push again. Left a Titan slip on the key tray like a calling card. Her pen tapped twice. "Good. Overconfidence. That helps." She slid a packet across the desk, thin, crisp. "Here's the interesting part. Titan responded to my preservation letter at 2:11 a.m. Someone's nervous." She pointed to a paragraph. "They've initiated an internal review and cooperate fully. Translation, they found the smoke and want to keep us from lighting it in public." "What smoke?" "Start here." She clicked open a log, loan 7841, Michael Grant. "Their call records show the borrower, you, never called." Every contact came from authorized agent on a number registered to Miller Innovations, Daniels LLC. Voice print attached to the file. Male 30s, not yours. She flipped to an email string. Underwriting flagged this for fraud prevention once, because the notary, Brenda Cole, notarized 3 high-value instruments that same week within the same family network. 2 for Chloe's cousin, 1 for you. Their notes say prior relationship unclear, sound like a friend doing favors. Chloe's friend, college, I've seen photos. Good, she said. Because Brenda has a Yelp page with exactly 6 reviews, all written by users who tag Chloe in their photos from girls' trips. Subpoena goes out at noon. Notary journal, seal log, video if they have it. If she waived formality, we'll bury her license in exhibits. She turned another page. And look here, Titan's appraisal order. They didn't send a full crew. They used a desktop appraisal augmented by on-site observations. Translation, someone with access fed them the foundation notes. Bentonite, any bells? I sat forward. So the clay on my mat wasn't a stranger's accident. It was a step in their process. Exactly, she said. It ties the physical trespass to the financial fraud. Jurors like stories you can touch. She drew a rectangle on her pad, my house, and then a smaller rectangle inside, my trust. Now exposure vectors. If Daniel thinks he's bulletproof, he'll keep swaggering. Our aim is to knock out his scaffolding before he sees the wrecking ball. How? 3 front squeeze. She held up a finger. 1, Titan. We send a draft complaint today. Elder financial abuse, predatory lending, negligent underwriting. We attach the notary angle, the power of attorney context, and the foundation trespass. They'll call their insurer within an hour, second finger. 2, Brenda. We file a complaint with the Secretary of State and the Notary Commission the same day we subpoena. Her best move will be to throw Chloe under the bus to save herself. People do that when their pension meets handcuffs. Third finger. 3, optics. A quiet message to Titan's compliance head. With 2 lines, your borrower is 72 and never spoke to you. Your broker is his son. Your notary is the son's wife's friend. We don't need the press. The threat of the press is enough. I watched the way she said it, calm, almost bored. This is just load calculus for her. She nodded at my notebook. Your turn. Keep logging. Keep recording. We need his own words lining up with our paper. If he says we can list fast again, ask who his we is. If he mentions Titan, ask if they fixed the mail. If he says authorized agent, smile like you don't understand and repeat it back. Make him clarify. Never accuse. Curiosity is admissible. Anger is not. I thought of the way Daniel had stood in the doorway, lantern-jawed and boyish, the way I used to believe he'd grow into the shape of that kindness. And if he bolts? He won't, she said. He thinks you're steady as a porch post. He thinks you'll never leave the house he plans to sell for you. She leaned back, eyes narrowing, as if sighting over a transit. We're going to invite Titan to a settlement discussion in this office. They'll bring a lawyer and a damage control VP. We'll put our binder on the table and quote a number the AVP can sign without waking the CEO. They'll fold to save the brand. And Daniel? He'll learn the difference between leverage and liability, she said. He's been using you as the first to buy the second. By the end of this, he'll have neither. Her assistant knocked and slipped in a single printed page. Subpoena draft, Cole Notary Services. Evelyn scanned it, initialed, and slid it to me. Want the ceremonial honor? I signed the margin like a foreman chalking a pour line. She smiled. Good. Now go be the man he underestimates. On the way out, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Hey, can you send me a photo of your homeowner's policy? Shoreline guy wants to look for discounts. Might save you money. I stood on the sidewalk in the Texas glare and let the heat bake the last of my illusions. He was still building. He believed the deck he'd framed out of lies could hold. I forwarded the text to Evelyn. Her reply came back in 10 seconds. Perfect. Don't respond yet. I'll draft you something sweet and useless. The more he asks, the more we get. When I got home, I sat at Linda's table with my logbook and wrote the day's headline in clean block letters. Offensive commenced. Under it, a note only she would understand. Load transferred. Structure stable. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday morning, 9 a.m. in Evelyn's boardroom, a clean glass box high enough above Austin that the city looked like a model train set. She wanted the view. She said it reminded people how small they really were. By 8:50, the room was staged like a courtroom that didn't need a judge. One long mahogany table, 4 chairs on each side, coffee carafe dead center, a folder in front of every seat. Evelyn and I sat together, backs to the window. She told me that's the power seat. Light at your back, eyes in shadow. The door opened right on time. Daniel, crisp suit, too much cologne. Chloe, tight smile and a pale pink blazer that tried to look innocent. Behind them, 2 men from Titan Capital Group, one legal, one corporate, both sweating before we even started. "Mr. Grant," the lawyer said, shaking my hand like it might explode. "So glad we could clear this up amicably." Evelyn smiled in a way that said, "You're already finished, shall we?" she said. The moment everyone sat, she slid a thick binder across the table and flipped it open. The top page read Exhibit A, Fraudulent Instrument Records. "Before we begin," she said calmly, "you should all know this meeting is being recorded and witnessed. You'll each get a transcript before end of business." Titan's lawyer blinked. "Recorded?" "Yes," Evelyn said. "Transparency keeps things tidy." Then she began, Exhibit A, power of attorney, forged using a signature not verified in person, notarized by Brenda Cole, whose notary license, as of this morning, is under state investigation for falsification of identity documentation. Daniel shifted in his chair. "Evelyn, I think we should—" She held up a hand. "Exhibit B, Titan loan application. All communications originated from a phone registered to Miller Innovations LLC, owned solely by Daniel Grant. Audio analysis confirms male voice, not belonging to Michael Grant. Copies of those call recordings have been submitted to the Office of the Attorney General." The Titan lawyer's pen stopped moving. His partner, the VP, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Evelyn continued, tone steady, as an engineer reading specs. "Exhibit C, bentonite clay residue from the Grant residence entryway. Lab confirmed match to soil stabilization compound used by Titan's subcontracted appraisers. In short, Titan's agents trespassed under false pretenses to obtain property data for a fraudulent mortgage." The silence was surgical. "Exhibit D," she said, tapping a page. "Daniel Grant's text correspondence with Titan Capital and Brenda Cole, obtained by subpoena, containing direct acknowledgement that his father won't notice what's happening and that Brenda would seal it quick." Chloe's hand flew to her mouth. "Daniel," she whispered. He looked at her, then at me. "Dad, I can explain." I didn't move. I just watched him the way you watch a crack travel across fresh concrete. Slow, inevitable. Evelyn leaned forward. "Explain later, Daniel. For now, listen." She turned to Titan's team. "You have 2 options. When we file immediately, elder financial abuse, wire fraud, forgery, trespass, and negligent lending. That means a public case, media, and a possible injunction freezing your assets pending investigation." The VP swallowed. "And option 2? "Option 2, she said smoothly, you nullify the loan today, expunge all liens, correct the credit record, and issue a formal apology and restitution payment of $250,000 for damages and emotional distress. You can call it a settlement, we'll call it justice." The lawyer blinked fast. "We'll need authorization." "You already have it," Evelyn said, sliding a single-page document forward. "Your general counsel signed last night. They know what's cheaper." He looked at the paper, then at the VP. The VP nodded once, hollow-eyed. "Done." Evelyn closed her binder, calm as finishing a crossword. "Excellent. You'll wire the funds by noon." Then she turned her gaze on Daniel. "As for you, your father isn't pressing criminal charges, but you're out, permanently. You'll receive a notarized relinquishment of any financial authority. You will sign it now, or we'll amend the complaint to include you as a co-defendant." Daniel's jaw flexed. His eyes darted toward me for mercy. I gave him none. "Sign," I said quietly. He did. His signature looked smaller than I remembered. Evelyn gathered the pages, snapped the binder shut, and rose. That concludes this meeting. No gavel, no shouting, just silence. The kind that follows when the lie runs out of air. Daniel stood, face pale. "Dad," he said, voice cracking for the first time in years, "I never meant to hurt you. Things got bad. I thought I could fix it before I lifted a hand." "Stop. You didn't just take money, Daniel. You took trust. You stole the one thing I can't rebuild." He blinked, tears threatening. "Please, Dad, go home," I said. "Figure out who you are without my name." He left without another word. Chloe trailed after him, eyes wet but silent. Titan's men shook hands they didn't want to shake and fled. When the door shut, Evelyn looked at me. "You okay?" I stared out at the skyline. "You ever fix a bridge that didn't deserve it?" She smiled faintly. "No, but I've seen a few worth saving." That evening, the house was quiet again, but this time it was peace, not emptiness. I walked room to room like an inspector at the end of a long project, checking for cracks, leaks, anything left unfixed. The bentonite stain by the mat was gone. I'd mopped it that morning. The papers that once threatened my future were locked in a safe. And the deed, my deed, sat under glass. Stamped and clean. Outside, the sun was sliding low, painting the yard in the same gold Linda used to call forgiveness light. I sat on the porch steps with a glass of iced tea, listening to the cicadas buzz like old machinery winding down. For the first time in months, I wasn't angry. Just tired in a good way, the kind that follows closure. I thought of Daniel as a little boy chasing a paper airplane through this same yard, laughing when it landed on the roof. I thought of Linda standing in the doorway, smiling, her hand raised in that half wave she always gave when she didn't want to interrupt my work. Somewhere between those memories and this moment, something precious had cracked. But like every engineer learns, not every crack means collapse. "Some just tell you where the stress was," I whispered to the empty yard. "We made it, Lynn." The wind shifted through the oaks, and for a second it felt like she was there beside me before heading inside. I looked back once at the house, my house, and smiled. "I built it once," I said softly, "and I rebuilt it again. What would you have done in my place? Would you forgive your son or take back what's yours and walk away? Tell me in the comments. I read every one of them. And before you go, make sure you're subscribed. Because on this channel, justice isn't just a story. It's the ending people deserve.